The girl funded by the foster family's scholarship program had finally been accepted into a graduate program. Overjoyed, she posted her "From the Mountains to the City" inspirational story all over social media. She even uploaded a photo of herself locking eyes with Chad Foster, captioned, "My mentor, my rock, the most extraordinary person in my life, always." The comments were filled with praise. "Yuri, so inspiring. I want to work as hard as you. The way you two look at each other. That's not exactly innocent, I'm shipping it already. Invite me to the wedding. I'll bring the biggest gift. Isn't he the youngest graduate advisor at H University? Serving as an academic workhorse for the person who helped your family, how is that not repaying kindness?" Chloe pinned her own comment at the top. "Thank you all for the love. I'll try my best to graduate and earn another diploma skull." I stayed silent for a moment and scrolled to her newest post. It was a set of screenshots from her thesis. And the full acknowledgement section. Every line traced back to Chad's all-nighters, his guidance, his patience, his encouragement. I stared at those images for a long, long time. I had seen all of that on Chad's computer before. He'd told me this thesis meant the world to him. I had stayed up all night with a fever, reviewing every page for him. Never realizing I was tailoring a wedding dress for someone else to wear. And in that moment, it hit me. Even the most solid marriage can crack. Chapter 1. When I walked through the door, I froze. A girl with her hair tied in a low messy bun was in my kitchen. Wearing my slippers. Busily slicing fruit as if she lived here. When she saw me, a flicker of irritation crossed her eyes, quickly smoothed over by a polite smile. "Anna. I've seen your pictures. You're even prettier in person." She carried the fruit out of the kitchen with no trace of awkwardness, moving around my home like she owned the place. Chad sat on the balcony with his laptop, fully absorbed in his work, so focused he didn't even notice I'd come back. The academic conference was supposed to end 2 days later, but since I'd finished my part early, I returned ahead of schedule. "Anna, I'm Chloe. Chad must have mentioned me." She set the fruit platter down. As she dipped her head, 2 strands of hair slipped perfectly past her ear. Almost deliberately soft and gentle. "I've been working on my thesis. My dorm has been ridiculously loud lately, and I just can't sleep. So Chad let me stay here for a few days." She smiled sweetly. "Don't worry about anything, Anna. I'll handle the housework. You can focus on work, I'll take good care of Chad." My brows tightened. Too loud in the dorm, so Chad brought her home. That was a reason I found very hard to believe. Chad and I had grown up together. He wasn't the type to lose all sense of boundaries out of sympathy. The reason I'd agreed to marry him in the first place was precisely because we knew each other inside out. Equals, rivals, partners. Even if we didn't end up a passionate couple, we were never supposed to become resentful strangers. And in many marriages, compatibility matters more than romance. Chad had the brains, the looks, the discipline, and the background. No bad habits, no chaos. The Foster and Campbell families had been long-standing business partners. Not quite a dramatic power family alliance, but complementary in every way. As a husband, there wasn't a better choice. And of course, we loved each other. More than all the calculations. Even now, I still feel a sting in my chest whenever I think about the day he thought I was going on a blind date, and rushed home from an academic conference overseas just to stop me. Chad, usually calm, cool, impeccably composed, showed up at my door completely disheveled. Hair whipped by the wind, tie yanked too tightly from anxiety, eyes bloodshot as if he hadn't slept in days. "Anna, if you want to get married, would you marry me?" I stood there holding 2 giant bags of trash, utterly stunned. Chad had always been a classic science guy. Terrible at expressing emotions, never once told me he liked me, and his attempts at comfort were painfully awkward. When I lost the top spot at school, he poked my forehead and sneered, "Wow, genius. Try to catch up next time. Then took my test paper and started explaining all my mistakes. But not once did he ever consider scoring a few points less just to make me feel better. We married naturally, the way everyone expected. A perfect match. The night before I left for the exchange program abroad. After a moment of intimacy, he buried his face in the crook of my neck like a child seeking comfort. "Anna, let's have a baby." I softly murmured an okay. If life had gone the way it was supposed to, we would have made it to the end. But now, it suddenly felt much harder. Chapter 2. I walked in with a cold expression, heels clicking sharply against the floor. "Anna, wait, I just mopped this morning. Could you maybe take your shoes off?" Chloe gasped dramatically and covered her mouth, perfectly timed to draw Chad's attention. I shot her a frosty look. Slippers are personal items. I don't wear ones other people have used. Our guest slippers looked nothing like the pair she had on. And Chad and I had matching couple slippers, placed by the door, impossible to miss. Chloe froze. She thought I would tolerate it because she was a recipient of the foster family's scholarship program. And because Chad brought her here as a guest. She assumed I'd swallow my irritation. She assumed wrong. She scrambled to take the slippers off, flustered. I'm so sorry. In my family, all the sisters shared the same pair of slippers. I didn't know you had rules like this. And they're just so cute, I've never seen slippers like these. Chad walked in from the balcony holding a glass of water. Chloe glanced at him with watery eyes, the picture of wounded innocence. Except the man she expected to rescue her didn't pick up the signal at all. When Chad looked at me, the coolness in his eyes softened immediately. "You finished early? Why didn't you tell me so I could pick you up?" I tossed the bag in my hand onto the couch. Just as I opened my mouth, Chloe sniffled. "Chad, I'm so sorry. I think I upset Anna. I didn't know I wasn't allowed to wear her slippers. I can buy her a new pair if she wants." Chad looked at her briefly, then back at me. "This is Chloe, the student I mentioned a while back. She just got into grad school. Her dorm situation is pretty rough, so she's staying here for a few days." I knew the foster family sponsored a number of students. Chloe was one of them. For younger sisters, a younger brother. She was the eldest. If not for the foster family's scholarship and mentorship, she probably would have married right after turning 18, just like her sisters. I knew who she was. I just didn't know that during my month-long work trip. She had moved into my home. And into my slippers. Anna, I grew up with nothing. I didn't know any of this matters. Please don't hold it against me. Now that we'll be living together, you can teach me, okay? Living together? I almost laughed. Then what about the hair clip you're wearing? And the perfume on you? Pretty sure those were in the master bathroom. If my house doesn't have rules, didn't your school at least teach you not to touch someone else's belongings? I let out a cold snort and tossed the slippers straight into the trash. There were 4 pairs of guest slippers right there in the cabinet. But she chose the matching couple pair that belonged to Chad and me. Chad frowned slightly, weary. "Let's just buy a new pair after dinner. It's just slippers." I cut him off. "I've been awake for 15 hours. I don't have the time or energy to go out just to buy slippers." Chad opened his mouth but said nothing. The air grew heavier. Chloe wiped her tears, voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Anna. I'll mop the floor again. And I'll go buy new slippers too. We have a cleaning robot," I said flatly. "Save the performance for someone else." I headed straight to the bedroom. Behind me, her muffled, humiliated sobs filled the living room. Chapter 3. By the time I finished washing up and stepped out of the bathroom, Chloe was already gone, dragging her suitcase out the door. Chad sat on the couch with his head lowered, his profile sharp and composed, the line of his jaw tense, Adam's apple rising and falling. "Are you upset?" he asked quietly. What exactly are you angry about? When we got married, we made a promise. Communicate, always. No cold wars, no guessing games. Say things clearly so small problems don't grow teeth. We agreed on that from day one. I took a breath. Dr. Foster, bringing a young woman home to live here. That's not something you would normally do. I didn't sugarcoat a thing. He covered his mouth with a soft laugh, eyes warming. You're jealous, Anna? I thought you never cared about me that much. I paused. Sweet words, sure. But absolutely not the answer I wanted. She's just a student supported by the Foster family's scholarship program, and her dorm situation and social issues mean she needed temporary housing. He shrugged lightly. My parents' other properties are either too far, or no time to clean them. I curled my lips in a humorless smile. Chad, without the Foster family, and without you. Would any of those things actually be a problem for her? Not used to dorm life? Afraid to talk to roommates? These weren't the kinds of complaints someone from an actually struggling background would dare to utter. And she's 27, Chad. Not 17. 2 years repeating high school exams, 3 years preparing for grad school. She had spent half a decade pursuing academics, yet somehow always needed to be rescued. Chad might believe her reasons. I didn't. Her constantly updated videos, the comments she pinned, her tone, her posture. Anyone with functioning eyesight could see what she wanted. No sixth sense required. Yes, he said softly, which is why I sent her home. He moved closer and rested his head against my shoulder. I've been so tired lately. I can't sleep well when you're not here. Chad can live without anyone. But never without Anna. He exhaled, voice low. You have to believe me. I thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. If 20+ years of knowing each other could be shaken that easily, then what did it even mean that I chose him so firmly back then? I had always believed he was a fundamentally good person. Even if we weren't in love, he would never do anything despicable. The next morning, like always, I rode with Chad to the lab. He still brewed herbal tea for me at dawn, still packed my vitamins and fruit with meticulous care. On the surface, nothing seemed to have changed. During my lunch break, I opened my phone, and the algorithm pushed me Chloe's latest blog update. I fly toward my own mountain, like a bird, thank you, my beloved mentor. The first photo in the carousel was a copy of my favorite book. When Chad and I had just gotten married, I used to bug him every day to read it to me. But the copy he gave Chloe even had the author's signature. My hands trembled as I kept scrolling. Below were screenshots of their chat messages. Chad, don't let something so small bother you. Chad, if you're upset, just spend more time in the lab. You shouldn't waste your energy on things like slippers. Chloe, then why is someone else allowed to waste energy? Chad, I can't control others, but I won't allow you to waste yours. Chloe. I'm so honored, yes, sir. Without realizing it, I slid into the comment section, and a cold wave washed over me. OMG, what kind of god-tier advisor is this? He spoils her so much. Total domineering CEO, style professor, and that face absolutely fits. I'm getting obsessed. Is it too late for me to apply to grad school now? Stop dreaming above, most advisors are like mine, can't go 3 sentences without calling my thesis trash. Real original. Sis, please keep updating, I live for this CP. In a daze, I accepted a document a colleague handed me. Anna, this is the list of H University students selected for the project. Do you want to take a look? I nodded and signed my name casually. It was a collaboration between our lab and H University. Their coordinator wanted us to give some of their students the opportunity to join. After discussion, our project team agreed to let them submit resumes for screening. We could probably take around 10 students. That night, when I drove home, Chad had already finished cooking. I changed into the slippers he had just bought for me, placed my phone in front of him, and asked, "Why didn't you bring me a signed copy of that book too?" He wasn't into social media. He preferred calling over texting. So I needed him to see how Chloe interpreted his every word. And how everyone else perceived the way they interacted. His brows drew tighter and tighter. Then he set my phone down and said quietly, "I understand." Chad explained the books were gifts arranged for several scholarship students. Not just Chloe. He didn't get one for me because he thought I cared more about the book itself than the signature. As for Chloe, he said he would handle it. I looked at him and nodded softly. All right. I believe you. For the last time. Chapter 4. Life moved forward in its usual rhythm, and our lab project was finally settling into place. Just as I was about to start working overtime, my phone rang. It was Chad. Dr. Foster, who almost always preferred cooking at home, was asking me out on a rare dinner date. I glanced around the empty lab and agreed without hesitation. We returned to the same old restaurant we'd been going to since high school. Their signature marinated dishes had always been our favorite. We had only just sat down when a too familiar figure appeared in the distance. Who else could it be but Chloe? She was carrying a tray, pouring water for newly seated customers. When she noticed us. No, when she noticed Chad. Her eyes instantly reddened. Tears welled up and spilled over, splashing onto the ordering device in her hand. I swirled the drink in my glass, lowering my gaze without speaking. Chad watched her and frowned. Did the Foster family stop your scholarship funding? Chloe drew in a shaky breath, trying, but failing, to steady her voice. I'm very grateful for everything Mr. Foster and you have done for me. But I think I should support myself from now on. She sneaked a glance at me, then muttered resentfully. At least this way I won't upset Professor Campbell. I lifted my head and looked at her coolly. If you want to work part-time, with your academic background you could easily tutor, or teach at an after-school center. There are plenty of options. But instead, you chose to work as a waitress at the restaurant Chad and I visit regularly. I truly don't know what your intention is. Chloe flinched like I'd stepped on her tail. This was just coincidence. Last time Chad took me here, I saw they were hiring. I just wanted to earn some extra money. I let out a quiet laugh. Earn money? With an University graduate program on her resume, she could find a dozen part-time jobs that paid more than waitressing. A student should at least look like one. It's better to be innocently clueless than calculating in such an obvious way. She froze mid-motion, her voice trembling. Anna, not everyone is as sharp-tongued and fearless as you. I came from the mountains. I'm awkward. I didn't even know you weren't supposed to share slippers with someone. And I don't dare talk to people like you do. But work is work. You earn money in your fancy lab, and I earn money standing here. I know you look down on me. But you can't humiliate me again and again. Chad turned to me, his tone light but pointed. Anna, don't corner the poor girl. Chloe, eyes swollen and red, edged closer to Chad for safety. She bowed deeply toward me. Professor Campbell, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have flaunted Chad's kindness everywhere. I shouldn't have upset you. I sincerely apologize. I'll delete all the videos. Please, don't make things harder for me. I raised a brow. How exactly have I made things difficult for you? Chapter 5. Chloe cast a pitiful glance at Chad, tears spilling down her cheeks like broken beads. The project your lab is running. I applied for it too. I know you don't like me, Professor Campbell, but I really worked hard. Why would you take that chance away from me? And suddenly, everything made sense. So that whole duet, her crying, Chad speaking for her, was all for this. A few days earlier, the students selected from University had started reporting to our lab one after another. And by a perfect twist of fate, 3 of the 4 girls in Chloe's dorm had been chosen. Everyone except her. When they returned to campus, they bragged endlessly. Our province's best funded lab. Mom, Dad, I finally made you proud. Turns out even workhorses get treated differently depending on where they work. Gold nest, silver nest, and then this diamond nest. The cafeteria food is amazing. Huge portions and free. The highlight of my resume, apparently one of our professors has a family member working there. And the professor leading us? Professor Campbell is insane, so young and so capable. My favorite women in the world are Emma Watson and her. I had reviewed every selected student's resume. But Chloe's resume had never reached my desk. I immediately asked my colleague in charge of the selection process to send it over. The minute I opened the file, one line stared back at me. Instead of asking why others don't give you opportunities, ask yourself what makes you deserve them. Chad looked at me silently, his expression unreadable. I could tell he was angry. "Anna," he said, voice tight. "Don't play with other people's futures." I blinked. And then almost laughed. Laughed at myself for not seeing him clearly after all these years. And laughed at him for never truly understanding me either. Otherwise, why would he rather believe someone else than believe me? Seeing Chad speak up for her, Chloe cried even harder. "Professor Campbell, it's all my fault, I know. I'm not blaming you. Whether I get into the lab depends entirely on your word." "Stop." I cut her off. "I'm not that powerful. And even if I were, I wouldn't waste it on you." Chad clearly didn't believe me. I asked around. "You're the one leading this project." But I know these decisions are made collectively, so I didn't interfere. "Still, today you pushed her too far." I gave a short, humorless laugh. "I pushed her. For your sake, I accepted her resume even after the submission deadline. A student who hasn't even passed the English proficiency test. Do you really think she can handle reading research papers? Should I show you the resumes of the other students?" Chloe's tears stopped mid-fall. She shot a terrified look at Chad, afraid he'd blame her. "Chad, you know how it is. I don't get along with my roommates. They never told me about the application deadline. By the time I found out, it was already too late." I actually laughed out loud. How could someone shove responsibility onto everyone but herself? As far as I know, the project announcement was posted everywhere on your campus. If you didn't pay attention, that's on you. Your roommates had no obligation to spoon-feed you information. But I also have my thesis. Chloe suddenly stiffened, a hint of defiant pride flashing in her eyes. "My thesis is better than most second- and third-year grad students." "Oh. Yes, a thesis is important." I nodded lightly. But in the first 3,000 words alone, I left over 30 suggestions for revisions. "And you're proud of that?" What a coincidence. Her proudest of thesis was the one I stayed up all night fixing. Dinner never happened. Or rather, I didn't get to eat. When I walked out, Chad followed and grabbed my arm. "She's just a student, Anna. You didn't have to humiliate her in front of everyone." I shook off his hand and stared coldly at him. "And what about you, Chad? When you accused me, in front of everyone, of deliberately targeting her, did you think about how I'm supposed to swallow that? We've been married 3 years. No, we've known each other our whole lives. Have we ever fought over a meaningless outsider? Never. So why now?" "Anna," he said quietly. "She's my student. What does that have to do with me?" Chapter 6. Chad didn't come home that night. Because something exploded online. The campus forum at H University had been hit with a leak from a so-called insider. A video of what happened earlier that day. Followed by Chloe's own social media posts. The so-called inspirational goddess you all adore. Turns out she spent her childhood leeching off her advisor's family, then sneaked into his home to cook for him, wore his wife's slippers, used her perfume, and clung to her advisor every chance she got. All I can say is, Mrs. Foster is too good for him, and someone still failed to become the mistress she desperately tried to be. Looks cold and quiet on the outside, but behind the scenes, what trash. The comments section detonated instantly. The post went viral like nothing the school had ever seen. Chad stayed perfectly invisible. And Chloe became the target of the entire campus. Aya sent this the girl from our dorm building? No wonder she kept running off campus. Our little room clearly couldn't house such a goddess. She deleted everything, but wasn't she the one branding herself as an inspirational blogger? What part of her screams inspirational? Climbing her way up counts as inspirational too, doesn't it? Different tracks for different goals skull. Let's see how the school deals with this. Professor Foster is young and brilliant, of course people would try to cling to him. Shameless. She's not even that young, right? Professor Foster is only 5 or 6 years older. Disgusting. Going into someone's home without permission, wearing the wife's slippers. What if she had athlete's foot or something? I don't even want to imagine. Girls with no upbringing are like that. OP already said she used other people's things without asking. Truly impossible to defend. Her skin must be made of iron. I still draft my messages in the file transfer window before talking to my advisor. Calling all members of the Cowardly Student Club. I sat alone in the study, staring at the photo frame on Chad's desk. Our first photo together. It was taken after the first monthly exam in high school. We tied for first place, so the teacher told us to take a picture together. I remembered Chad muttering before the shutter clicked, finally, someone worth competing with. At least you qualify to stand next to me. I rolled my eyes. Enjoy it while it lasts. Next month's photo will be a solo of me looking gorgeous. You can step aside. You wish. And just like that, we became each other's only real rival in high school. Chad, what was your answer for the last question? I'm not telling you. Whatever. What did you translate that English word into? Call me big sister and I'll tell you. Get lost. Chad, do you want to go to T University or J University? What about you? T University. Then I'm going to T University too. When scores came out, he ended up in Country M, I went to Country Y. We met every year, argued every time, stayed in each other's lives constantly. And in the end, exactly as everyone expected, we became the unstoppable pair. Suddenly, my phone vibrated non-stop. It was Chad. The moment I picked up, his voice burst through the speaker. Shaken, furious, completely out of control. Anna, how could you spread obscene rumors about a girl? She's a student. Are you trying to destroy her life? She didn't do any of that. This time, facing Chad's baseless accusations again, I was calm. Eerily calm. But why did my chest hurt so much? Why did it feel like I might suffocate at any second? What happened? I forced my trembling voice into steadiness. Stop pretending. I'm starting to wonder if I chose the wrong person 3 years ago. Crash. I flinched. The photo frame slipped from my fingers and shattered across the floor. Broken beyond repair. Maybe the frame wasn't the only thing that shattered. Chapter 7. Chad, who usually couldn't be bothered to reply on iMessage, created an entire social media account just for this incident. Facing the camera, he wore the same calm, composed expression as always. Chloe and I have known each other since childhood. She's welcome to apply to my graduate program, just like anyone else. Yes, she has been to my home, and yes, she has visited my parents regularly. The reasons are personal, but it's nothing more than normal contact. As for the slippers, no one ever taught her those things. It's like people who aren't used to using serving chopsticks at first, or those who don't know they should keep right on escalators. Regarding her academic ability, everyone blossoms at their own time. I believe my students will shine in their own season. Chad had always had that skill. Turning a losing situation around in under 3 minutes. Overnight, the entire online narrative flipped. So it was female rivalry all along. Spreading obscene rumors about another woman? If not the wife, who else would do it? The girl has always admitted she was a scholarship recipient. Professor Foster is literally the one who changed her life. Of course she'd bring local specialties or cook for his family sometimes. That's how we country people show gratitude. Insider, my ass. Who other than the family would know about the slipper thing? So it was the wife. Gross. I heard that woman works at that super elite lab, rich family and all, and she even blocked this senior's chance to join the project group. What? A capitalist princess bullying the working class? Investigate immediately. If cross-discipline students aren't allowed to take related internships, then what are we even studying for, just to pay the state tuition? Within half a day, my entire identity was exposed. People began reporting me to my employer, demanding they investigate my credentials and publications. Even my father's company received a call from the tax bureau, triggered by multiple anonymous reports. From that day on, Chad never returned home. He moved into the university's faculty apartment, which only fueled the online speculation. That night, he and she had sent me one last message. That book really didn't suit you. You're nothing like the heroine in it. Chloe is. For a moment, my nose stung so badly I could barely breathe. All those times I bent over backward to be good to him suddenly felt pointless. Empty. Chad had treated me so terribly. Chapter 8. Chloe's follower count doubled overnight. She continued branding herself as an inspirational blogger. She even started accepting sponsorships. And in some of the videos, Chad appeared in the background. Sometimes in the lab. Sometimes in his office. Sometimes at academic conferences. Her latest post showed her thesis proposal, with Chad patiently giving over 100 revision suggestions. OMG, I'm so dumb. My advisor got stuck with me, poor man. The comments were full of praise again. Only one person questioned it. If Professor Foster treats every student like this, then fine. But if he only treats her like this, where's the fairness? That comment shot to the top, but disappeared within minutes. Soon, screenshots of that deleted comment began popping up everywhere. Realizing something was wrong, Chloe quickly restricted the visibility of the post. When my father called, I had just finished packing all of Chad's belongings, ready to send them back to the Foster family. Did you see the company's stock price? I didn't respond. Because of everything involving me, my father's company stock had been dropping steadily. People were saying that with a daughter like me, how clean could her father possibly be? Look a little deeper, and everything must be full of problems. That's what the whispers said. On the other end of the line, the man who had protected me my whole life remained exactly the same. Shielding me, again. If you did all of this, then it's my fault for not raising you well. I'll take the financial loss. But if you didn't, then handle it your own way. Whatever happens afterward, I'll still carry it. But I can't let your decisions drag down the money of me and all the shareholders. That's money too, you know. My nose stung. Tears threatened to fall. Dad, I say nothing. If I don't know the daughter I raised, who would? Take your time and decide what to do. Chloe's issue was simple. Check the IP. Check the so-called insider's IP. Just as everyone online said. There were only 3 people in the house that day. If I wasn't the insider, then who else could describe every detail, twist it just enough, and post it online? Sure enough, a single search confirmed it. The same IP as Chloe. I hired a lawyer and prepared to gather evidence to sue Chloe. And also to file for divorce from Chad. For me, the only difficult part was ending the marriage. Maybe because I had truly invested in it. Walking away now felt heavy. Sharp. Almost unspeakably sad. But I kept reminding myself, No matter how painful something is, painful things still pass. Chapter 9. On Mr. Foster's birthday, the kind of gathering that counted as a miniature high society event in H City. Chloe glided through the Foster family's grand hall wearing a custom mermaid gown. Anyone with eyes could tell the dress was expensive. And even the brooch she wore matched Chad's exactly. Her eyes sparkled with triumph. To everyone she met, she repeated the same line with sugary pride. That everything she was today was thanks to the Foster family's care. That Mr. Foster was like a second father to her. That the Fosters were the foundation she stood on in this city. When she passed me, she pretended she had just noticed me. "Oh, Anna. Chad already apologized on your behalf. This evening gown was his gift to me. Took a lot of alterations too, cost me plenty of time." She gave me a pitying smile. "If I were you, I'd just bow my head and soften up a little. Chad has such a gentle temper." Her gloating practically dripped off her face. "Are you happy?" I asked calmly. "Huh?" Her smile froze instantly. "What are you trying to do?" she stammered. I smiled sincerely. "Just asking." "Why are you afraid?" Chloe stood there in stunned silence. Perhaps even she didn't understand. If anyone should feel cornered tonight, it shouldn't be her. And yet she was the one panicking. Mr. Foster's expression had been dark since the beginning. Before the banquet started, I had told him about my decision to divorce Chad. I waited until after his birthday out of respect. I didn't want it to affect the partnership between our families. If the divorce went smoothly, good. If Chad refused, I would need Mr. Foster's help convincing him. Dragging things into a lawsuit would hurt me, hurt Chad, and hurt both our families' companies. He tried hard to talk me out of it. But my resolve didn't budge. "You saw what happened today," I said quietly. "If the one standing here were Chad's sister, you'd support her divorce, wouldn't you?" Mr. Foster opened his mouth but couldn't speak. After a long moment, he sighed heavily. "I've watched you grow up. This is Chad's fault." By the time Chloe sashayed past us for the third time with champagne in hand and pride in her eyes, Sarah finally snapped. "So this is the hillbilly chicken? The one dreaming of marrying into the Foster family and calling the old man a dad?" Sarah, my best friend since I was in open crotch pants, wore a lipstick worth thousands and a mouth dipped in venom. Chad only had the flu and a fever a while ago. How did his brain end up scrambled? He might be nearsighted, but he's not blind. She poked my cheek. "Look at our Anna baby. Perfect features. 2 eyes, exactly the right number." I lowered my gaze. "I'm getting a divorce." "Good." She didn't hesitate for even a heartbeat. Just like when she used to dare me to eat dirt as a kid. When it comes to relationship problems, I always vote breakup. You only married Chad for his face anyway. Look at him now, he looks like a discount movie villain with permanent resting betrayal face. And that scholarship girl they raised? Dressed head to toe in black like some cursed spirit. Even a top-tier monk might not contain her aura. Don't let her bad luck cling to you." I couldn't help laughing. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Chad not far away. He had been standing there the entire banquet, lips pressed tight, expression icy. He was waiting. Waiting for me to bow my head. Unfortunately, I wouldn't. Whether he stood by the dessert table or the staircase, who he stood with, whose jewelry matched his suit. None of that had anything to do with me anymore. Before the banquet ended, Sarah and I drove home first. The divorce agreement was left in his room, along with everything he had ever kept in my home. The place we lived in was a premarital property I bought because it was close to work. We'd moved in from our wedding apartment afterward. And now, with the market at its peak, selling it would only bring profit. Chapter 10. When Chad walked out of the restroom, he realized Anna was gone. He didn't even have time to say goodbye to Mr. Foster before rushing out and driving away. Chloe hurried after him, but the mermaid gown she was so proud of became her biggest hindrance. She tripped hard on the pavement, falling flat, tears blurring her vision. As she stared at the black car disappearing into the night, her face twisted with unwillingness. Chad pressed on the horn in frustration, while repeatedly calling Anna. He was blocked. Just this once. Just this once. He had wanted to teach Anna a lesson. Because in his mind, she was the one completely in the wrong. He never expected her to turn on him so abruptly. To refuse even the chance to talk things through. Something they had agreed upon at the start of their marriage. What Chad expected even less was what he saw when he returned home. A real estate agent showing buyers around their house. "Who allowed you in my home?" he snapped. The agent snorted. "Are you insane? Anna commissioned me to sell this place." "What do you mean your home? This house belongs to her, and only her." Chad's entire body jolted. The composure he'd carried his whole life cracking. "Get out. All of you, get out. This is my home. No one comes in here." But even after he forced everyone out, Chad finally saw the truth. This home was no longer his. Everything inside had been cleared out. Even the simple line art drawings they had once made together were painted over, leaving not a trace. He and Anna had lived here for 3 years. Over 1,000 days and nights. And now, it had all vanished like a dream shattered into dust. Clutching the divorce agreement in his hand, Chad felt as though he were seeing Anna again. Sitting alone on the bay window of the study that night, still and quiet like autumn water. She must have wanted to divorce him then. Not because he had allowed Chloe to freely post on social media for the past month as some misguided punishment. Not because of the scandal. And not even because today, he let Chloe wear the gown that should have belonged to Anna. Chapter 11. Very soon, I received a call from the real estate agent, saying the buyer was someone with the last name Foster. He was willing to purchase the house at 20% above market price, on the condition that I meet him. No need to guess who it was. He must have seen the divorce papers. When I saw Chad, it was obvious he hadn't slept for days. This was the second time I had seen him look so disheveled. He sat across from me and urgently pushed the divorce agreement toward me. "What does this mean?" "Exactly what it says." "Chad, isn't this the outcome you wanted?" Chad froze for a moment, then tore the divorce agreement without hesitation. "I'm not agreeing to this. I have never once thought about divorcing you. But I want to." He stared at me, bewildered. "Why? We don't have any fundamental issues." I curved my lips in a faint smile. "Do you really think that if I wanted to deal with someone like Chloe, I'd resort to such a sloppy, hole-ridden scheme?" Chad paused and stammered, "I didn't think that far. I just wanted to clarify things for her. She's had a hard life. She can't withstand this kind of public pressure. Can't you put yourself in her shoes for once?" I let out a cold laugh. "Chad, have you ever put yourself in my shoes? Has my journey been easy? Was it easy for my father to build everything he has from nothing? Did I breeze my way to where I am today, fighting through all the competition and breaking through every barrier? Why should I be ruined by a couple of her posts? And by your so-called clarification video?" I tried hard to calm myself, afraid tears might fall in front of him. Chad reached out to grab me, but I yanked my arm away. His hand hovered in the air, catching nothing. "Anna. I deleted that video a few days later. I never wanted to hurt you. I really do love you." I looked directly at him. "Throwing me to the wolves to face public shaming, then casually deleting the video afterward, that's your way of loving me?" "No. I shouldn't be asking you this. I should be asking myself why I ever allowed you to hurt me like this." Chad collapsed heavily into his seat, holding his head as his entire body trembled. I took another copy of the divorce agreement from my bag. I've already had the lawyers draft all the terms regarding assets and shares. Mr. and Mrs. Foster have also reviewed it. If you tear this one, I have more in my bag. He stared at the stack of divorce papers in my hand, shaking his head desperately. Anna, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I'll hand her over to another advisor. I'll resign from the university if I have to. Just give me another chance. Give him another chance? Chad, deep down you know, I've reminded you more than once. There was nothing left for me to choose. The moment Chad chose to stand on her side, fate had already dropped its hammer. Not even a second was left for me to decide. Just sign it. If this escalates to a lawsuit, it won't be good for anyone. And the Foster family would never allow news of our divorce to spread across the entire city. Chapter 12. After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, I got into Sarah's car and left immediately. Chad went back to campus, and somehow Chloe managed to snap a picture of his divorce certificate. Now I can openly say I like him. As for who was right or wrong in the past, time will tell. The comments were already starting to crack. Why does this vibe feel so off? Something about this doesn't sit right. I really hope their divorce has nothing to do with you, otherwise I might accidentally become a mistress supporter, JK. Honestly, looks like you already are. She already said she only admired him from afar and never bothered anyone. Clearly the professor realized his ex-wife had bad character. Sis, you deserve happiness. My advice to the commenter above, uninstall those trashy romance apps from your phone. Sarah glanced at the new video and didn't even bother swearing. The mosaic might as well not exist. She's obviously throwing shade at you. I lowered my gaze and dialed a number. Attorney Zhang, once everything is verified, file the lawsuit officially. Request compensation based on your calculated losses, and demand a public apology across all platforms. In less than an hour, the comments under that video completely reversed. I can't. Stop recommending me this IQ-lowering blogger. Every time I see her, my brain cell count drops by 1,000,000. And she calls herself an inspirational blogger? Inspiring who? Women who aspire to be mistresses? Why isn't this account banned yet? Violates every basic moral code. Her advisor isn't any better. Came out specifically to clarify, turns out they staged the whole thing. Hard not to believe the plan was to force the ex-wife into divorce. At H University, this needs a serious investigation. How many times do I have to say, let the truth unfold slowly? Stop treating my idol like a disposable plot device. The way they investigated Professor Campbell and her family's company back then, do the same to these two. No one walks away. The day Chloe posted her apology statement, the flowers blooming along both sides of the elevated highway were especially vibrant. Spring had finally arrived in H City. Facing the camera, she tearfully talked about how hard life had been for her, how the compensation demanded by the lawyers far exceeded what she could afford, and how they were basically driving her to death. But the comments section had no sympathy left. So because you're broke, the victim should foot the bill? Make it make sense. If you didn't want this ending, maybe don't do those things in the first place. A few tears don't erase consequences. Seeing everyone so clear-headed makes me relieved. Hurry up and pay. Purely self-inflicted. If I get recommended one more of her posts, I'm uninstalling the app. You guys never actually expected her to pay that full amount, right? Sarah followed the traffic lazily, as if she had already figured everything out. My guess. In a few days your company's PR team will step in, play the reasonable, compassionate card, show that she's learned her lesson, and boom, stock price goes up. Your dad still plays the game better than anyone. I smiled and pointed outside the window. What flowers are these? Tax flowers. Sarah said it dead serious. They bloom because of our taxes. Chapter 13. A few days later, I ran into Chloe at the entrance of the lab. Her eyes were swollen, her face dark with resentment. When she saw me, she didn't even bother pretending anymore, the disgust in her eyes was completely unmasked. I've seen you before. More than 10 years ago. She let out a self-mocking laugh. I really hated that place. It was always so hot in the summer. That year, my mom and I carried a basket of eggs. I was wearing a pair of floral cloth shoes with a hole in them, that was the best pair I had. We stood outside the foster family's house for a long time. That was the first time I saw Chad. I prayed he would say something to me. But all his attention was on you. I calmly took a step back. Sorry, I don't remember. Don't remember? Of course. It was just the most meaningful summer of my life, after all. I glanced at the time and interrupted her rambling. I'm in a bit of a hurry. Chloe suddenly grabbed me in agitation. It was just a pair of slippers. You embarrassed me on purpose. You just got lucky, born into the right family. If you were born like me, in a family that only cared about sons, where I couldn't even afford school, wouldn't you claw your way upward with everything you had? How dare you ruin my life like this? More colleagues were walking past the entrance now. I looked at her coldly and said it directly. Whether it was really just a pair of slippers, you know that better than I do. You wanted to test Chad's boundaries. Living in my house, wearing my slippers, using my things, doing everything a hostess would do. Was it really just about slippers? Don't blame your misfortune on others. Chloe suddenly burst into laughter, so hard that tears came out. So what? You're nothing special now either. You're just a divorced, used-up woman. So what if you have money? You're a poisonous, vicious old hag. From now on you'll only be able to marry some old man and raise someone else's kids. I curved my lips slightly and swayed the coffee cup in my hand. The next second, I splashed it straight onto her face. You're almost 28, aren't you? Who knows if you'll even graduate in 2 years. When I was your age, I was already in a top-tier research group. I'm 30 now. Being wealthy is the least impressive thing about me. If someone like me could ruin my own life, then what about yours? Can you even imagine how bad it could get? Chapter 14. From that day on, everything I heard about Chad came to me only as rumors. I heard that Chad resigned from the university, and the administration didn't try very hard to keep him. I continued working on my projects as usual. None of this was enough to affect me anymore. As for Chloe, the next time I heard about her was when she was arrested for intentionally injuring someone. After class that day, a migrant worker suddenly rushed into the lecture hall. He claimed to be Chloe's husband. It turned out that all these years, Chloe's parents had promised him that once Chloe finished her master's degree, she would marry him. He had been sending money home to support her whole family. But a few days earlier, he saw Chloe's videos on his phone. He immediately bought a train ticket and rushed to H-City to confront her. You all lied to me. Every one of you lied. You're coming home with me to get married. You're not going to school anymore. Chloe instinctively pulled a small knife from her bag and stabbed him more than once. At the same time, I finished all my current projects and prepared to resign from the lab to continue my studies. 3 years later, I became the youngest doctoral advisor at H University. The first group of students I supervised created an account together, with the ID me and my miserable PhD advisor. They would occasionally post amusing little moments. Your academic writing is too avant-garde. Out of kindness, I suggest deleting this. Are these deductions learned from Detective Conan? Oh wait, that series might be too old for you. Maybe you should switch advisors. You're ruining my reputation. Did you eat psychedelic mushrooms? Why are your data this crazy? Please don't mention my name. This isn't acknowledgement, it's slander. The day before my birthday. I had already lost count of how many times I'd seen that familiar figure standing under the street lamp. I ignored him and walked toward my parking space. Chad finally couldn't hold back and blocked my path. Anna, have you been well these past few years? I politely stepped back and smiled. Not bad. Chad's eyes suddenly turned red. I haven't. Not at all. Without you, I'm not well at all. I frowned slightly, and Chad seemed to think I was softening. Anna, can we get married again? I know I was wrong. You haven't remarried all these years because you haven't found anyone more suitable than me, right? I suddenly felt annoyed. So Chad wasn't anything special after all. I haven't remarried because I don't want to, not because I was waiting for you. Chad interrupted me emotionally. You don't feel even a little regret? Not even the tiniest bit? He cautiously held out his hand, pinching his little finger as if asking for just a sliver of forgiveness. I let out a soft sigh. That marriage was only a very small mistake in my life. I've corrected it now, and it won't affect my future. But if you show up again, that would be impolite. You're a smart man. I think I've said everything clearly enough. In the car's side mirror, Chad's silhouette reflected silently. Long gone was the proud confidence he once had, and in my heart, he could no longer stir even the slightest ripple. That night, I received a call from Chad's sister. Anna, Chad, he just had a car accident. He's badly hurt, the doctor says it's serious. Do you want to? I'm in the middle of a group meeting. I can't take this call right now. I'll deal with it when I'm done. Chad lay in the hospital bed, staring in despair as his sister put her phone down. He knew very well. Even if I really did finish my meeting, I would never return that call. The seasons may repeat, but people cannot turn back. From now on, the road is the road. And I am me.